Good morning, I'm Anine Dormal. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. As controversy overshadows South Africa's 2010 Soccer World Cup anniversary today, Brazilian soccer great Zico has declared his candidacy for FIFA presidency after saying he would be available for soccer's top job. Arthur Coimbrabut says there would need to be a change of rules in order to make his run viable. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter announced last week he was standing down. This after the body was hit by a wave of corruption and bribery allegations that are still being investigated. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has made it clear that the possibility of a referendum on Gauteng's e-tolls is not an option. He says government has heeded calls by the people of Gauteng to ensure e-tolls are affordable. Ramaphosa was replying to questions in Parliament.
The revenue that has been received just in the past month has started ticking up. And we are certain that rather than total rejection of this system, we are beginning to see people having a deeper and a better understanding of what the government has decided on.
Ghana has halted a plan to test 2 Ebola vaccines in the eastern part of the country. This after legislatures have backed local protests against the trials. The protests are said to be sparked by fears of contamination. Ebola has killed more than 11,000 people in Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia since it began more than a year ago. Ghana has yet to record a case. South Africa and Mozambique have signed an agreement to minimize interference during the process of migration from analog to digital terrestrial television. This was agreed upon when Communications Minister Faith Mutsambi met with her Mozambican counterpart in Maputo.
Mozambique had been ready since 2006 with regard to digital dividend one. They could have released it, but because of their Ubuntu, they felt because coincidence based on the status of the migration process in the region that other countries were not yet ready.
We have agreed with our neighbors, and in this case the South African government, to come across to the situation where we could sit and structure this agreement in order to minimize the potential problems, which we don't think that they will come anyhow.
And the junior Springboks have qualified for the semi-finals at World Rugby's Under-20 Championship. South Africa finished the pool stages ranked highest after they beat Australia in a bonus point 46-13 win. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Given, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anine. Now, results of Zimbabwe, yesterday's by-elections in Zimbabwe are starting to trickle in this morning. Counting of the ballot boxes from the 16 constituencies started late last night. At least 102 candidates successfully filed their nomination papers to contest 16 constituencies across the country there. More than 400,000 Zimbabweans were eligible to vote. The elections were, of course, necessitated by Morgan Tsvangarai's MDC party, who expelled 21 MPs for joining a breakaway faction of the MDC, led by the party's former Secretary General and ex-Finance Minister Tendai Biti. Now, our Zimbabwean correspondent in Harare, Shinga Nyoka, joins us this morning. Very good morning to you, Shinga. Thanks for joining us.
Morning to you, Eben.
Shinga, you went to various polling stations yesterday. You've been out and about. Just give us the latest news and how you found the situation throughout the day.
Well, when we went around the Harare constituencies, or the seats that were being, the voting that was taking place in Harare yesterday, there was generally a low turnout, especially in the Harare East constituency that was that had formerly been led by the MDC Secretary General Tendai Biti. But what we understand, though, is that in the rural areas, in the hotly contested Hurungwe West, where former ZANU-PF chairman Themba Mliso was standing as an independent against ZANU-PF. There were reports from observers of irregularities, people being herded to the polling stations, and also threats being made by village headmen against the voters that if they didn't vote for ZANU-PF, that they would be chased away from the village. But those reports were very isolated. From what we understand, there was a very high turnout in Urungwe, but generally across the country, because the MDC was boycotting this particular election, people decided to stay away.
Just tell us about the early picture that's emerging, if there is such a thing, and when can we expect the final results in the by-election to be made public?
At this stage, it's not clear who has taken the lead. ZANU-PF, for example, has said that the high turnout in Urungwe would suggest that they themselves have a clean sweep of the elections, not just in that constituency, but around the country. And the suggestions are, because of the low voter turnout, that ZANU-PF is likely to have won the constituencies in the urban areas. What we understand from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is that the vote tallying and the verification is taking place, with results expected to start to be announced this morning.
Now, this election is particularly significant for someone like Joyce Mujuru, who for the first time squared up against the old party. Are we going to see her making an impact here?
Well, Joyce Mujuru has kept very much out of the public eye since she was sacked as vice president and sacked from the party. She has not made any kind of overt declaration that she will want to stand against ZANU-PF. She's not standing in this particular election. However, we have some independent candidates who have joined forces with some of the former ZANU-PF renegades. And but from what we've seen in terms of the voting patterns, they're very new parties, very small parties, and they have very little impact in these constituencies that they're contesting in. And the fact that there's so many of them, in one particular constituency, for example, in Kambuzuma, there were 9 candidates, 8 of them independents. They're likely to have split the vote. And so ZANU-PF is likely to take the lead in these constituencies.
Now, analysts here in South Africa, they expect a clean sweep, really, for ZANU-PF. Is that the same sentiment in Zimbabwe?
Absolutely. The fact that most of these strongholds were opposition strongholds, and the fact that the movement for democratic change is not contesting, really has given ZANU-PF the green light to go into some of these areas. We saw especially in the urban areas, ZANU-PF was the party that was doing the mobilizing people to go and vote, holding rallies, whereas a lot of these small independent candidates really didn't have the resources to campaign. And ZANU-PF has been promising a lot for these people. They've been promising an improvement in water, an improvement in electricity, free stands for them, and that really is appealing to these constituencies, many of which are very poor. And so at this stage, it appears likely that ZANU-PF will take most of these seats.
Thank you very much, Shinga Nyoka, joining us live on the line, really, from Harare in Zimbabwe. By-elections taking place there. And just to recap, of course, today, yesterday, Zimbabwe held their by-elections, and many people are hoping for new leadership that can take the country forward. Now, our tweet of the day comes from Chief Shingaira, and he says, people are tired of parties that do not deliver, and they want capable and principled leadership. Hashtag Zimbai elections there. That update was, of course, a little bit earlier by Shinga Nyoka. Now, we move on. Headline-grabbing cases of cyber attacks, like the very recent US data hack, may seem a faraway problem for many African countries. But research suggests business on the continent have seen the number of these attacks increase in recent times. The Cisco 2014 annual security report also shows that global threat alerts are increasing at rates of about 14% year on year. Now, to talk a little bit more about how African companies need to raise their preparedness to the risk of cyber attacks. We are joined by the Chief Technical Officer of PayU. He comes to us live from Cape Town, Mr. Andre Pendera. So very good morning to you, Andre. Thank you once again for joining us there.
Hi, Eben. Thanks for having me.
I think before we talk about the lay of the land on the African continent, just tell us, or just unpack for us what happened last week with this US data hack. What has the latest developments been around that?
Essentially, the US federal database, personnel database, was compromised. That news broke last week, but the US government was aware of it since April, and since April been trying to clean up the traces and perpetrators from the environment. In fact, the attack has been going on for more than a year. Essentially, the data that was compromised was the US federal personnel. That is all their personal information, bank accounts, security clearances. So all of that really personal, sensitive information was compromised. And currently the fingers are still pointing towards the Chinese government, which leans towards espionage. That is unofficial, but that's where the fingers are pointing.
Now, Andre, should more countries on the continent, including us here in South Africa, be taking these kinds of risks very seriously?
Absolutely, Eben. I think there's almost no data that lives in isolation anymore. Just about all data is accessible via the internet or via networks that can be reached via the internet. So it's absolutely critical that not just countries, but companies and individuals really start taking this serious and lift our game completely on how we protect ourselves.
How do we do that on the African continent? And is there a real spike in the threat of this kind of crime hitting our shores?
Yeah, so it starts with so South Africa is one of the 28 countries in the world that have cybercrime policies in place. But policy is only as good as the execution. So the National Prosecution Office, they are heavily criticized for not taking on really difficult cases. So it's a matter of getting really skilled individuals into these institutions and laying down legislation to give them authority to execute.
What about the policing of these kinds of crimes? I don't see many prosecutions happening here in South Africa. Is that the case in the rest of Africa? And is that an area that we really have to step up? Yeah, so like I said, the NPO is heavily criticized for not taking on difficult cases. So what is clear is that the policies are there, even though they are criticized. I don't think the NPO has massive capacity and skilled resources to take on some of the more tricky cases. What I read is that the NPO have a very high success rate at bringing when they do execute, but they are very picky at taking on the cases because they are of the very nature very complex and takes a lot of time, which is resource intensive. What about education? Are we seeing enough education campaigns being waged against this kind of crime? And how do we inform our public a little bit better then?
Yeah, Eben, I think this is key. I only really see the media playing a role like this program you're hosting right now. I only really see the media driving the awareness of cybercrime. and normally on the back of incident like this US data hack. I think it needs to be it needs to go right down to grassroots. It's something that our schools, even as parents, we need to inform our children, protect our person, our household. Schools need to advocate it. I think companies need to advocate it. For instance, Payu, when a new employer starts, we do background checks on them. Within the first week when they start, we do a complete security training with them. We obviously deal with lots of card data and payments, so for us it's absolutely critical, but we're all vulnerable. I also think that the government can do a lot more to roll out campaigns on a national level.
Andre, thank you very much for joining us. That's the Chief Technical Officer of Payu, Andre Penderis. We're talking about cybercrime here in South Africa and the wider continent and how we tap into the rest of the world. Now, yesterday, our Deputy President, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, faced aggressive questions in the National Assembly about e-tolls and on the parlor state of finances in some state-owned enterprises. Let's just take a quick look at what you've been saying on this matter. It's something that really has South Africa talking. SA Parliament, J.O. says, Togo Didiza is so much matured in handling Parliament compared to the other lady, Viva Toko Viva, says J.O. Of course, that's what Parliament. Honourable says, Cyril Ramaphosa is so calm despite the fire coming from opposition parties. That was a tweet from Honourable a little bit, yesterday. Jabu Peter Maluleka says, Hong, hong, hong. Yeah, near. Never a dull moment in the South African Parliament. He's also talking at Willie Madisha, Miss Disa there. And then Lerato Munyatsi says, I think Cyril Ramaphosa is not telling the truth, which people have started paying e-tolls. I'm only seeing more backing out. 2 billion rand is owed, says Lerato. Yeah, that will have to be tested, wouldn't it? Then Tao Tona says, but Mr. President did the same thing when he mocked the white people about pronouncing Nkandla, talking about the parliamentary debate. Never a dull moment in Parliament, is there? Now, sparks flew in Parliament last night when Defence Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula alleged that some members might be debating budget votes under the influence of alcohol. Angry opposition members insisted that she withdraw her statement and apologise.
Presiding officer said their hands full. The brawl began after COPE MP Willie Madisha poked fun about Science and Technology Minister Naledi Pando's accent.
You see, some of us don't know English properly. And then we can only come and say, hong, 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 like that.
Honorable Madisha.
Yes. Hong, hong, hong.
Honorable Madisha.
Hong, hong,
Honorable Madisha.
That's the only thing that she knows.
Honorable Madisha.
Yes. Thank you.
Members of the ANC did not find anything funny about Madisha's gesture, and Mapisa Ngakula protested.
You know, this thing of having this bar open all the time is creating problems for the government.
Order, can you take a seat? I will recognize you when the time comes. Honorable member of the EFF, can you please take your seat? I will recognize you.
And Chairperson, I am ready to move a motion on this matter on one of the days that the bar must close as early as possible. Because either in the afternoon or in the evening, people don't behave in a very normal manner.
But Madisha and other members called her to order.
Thank you.
It's very clear that what the Honourable Minister is doing is alleging and insinuating that the Honourable Madisha is under the influence of alcohol.
You must instruct her immediately to stand up and apologize and withdraw her. Because, as a matter of fact, if we can bring a breathalyzer here, majority of ANC members will not pass that breathalyzer.
She's got to withdraw.
Honorable Madisha.
She's got to withdraw.
Honorable Madisha.
Not by hook or crook, I insist.
Honorable Madisha, can you take a seat?
Move out of that particular point.
Can you take your seat, Honorable Madisha?
But then tell her to withdraw.
I don't think you have heard what I said.
No, I've heard. But
okay, then you have
she
not
must withdraw
heard.
that.
Can you take a seat?
The presiding officer, Toko Didiza, ruled them out of order and managed to proceed with budget votes until the early hours of this morning. Opposition parties rejected almost all the budget votes. Manelisi Tubase, SABC News, Parliament.
We love Parliament here in South Africa, don't we? What do you think? Should the bar be open the whole day at Parliament? I didn't even know there was a bar that's open. Anyhow, let's move on. At SABC Newsroom is where you can send us your views on that issue. But let's move on and take a look at what's happening elsewhere in the world. We start in China here today. The South China Morning Post reports that more public hospitals in the city have stepped up inspections against the Middle East respiratory syndrome in response to the spike in the number of cases in South Korea. In the US, the USA Today says Pope Francis pressed Russian President Vladimir Putin yesterday to pursue peace in Ukraine, calling for all concerned parties to implement a 4-month-old agreement. And finally, in Europe, 2 of Al-Qaeda's most important spiritual leaders have told The Guardian that the terror group is no longer a functioning organization after being ripped apart by ISIS. Let's take a quick look at what's happening here in South Africa today. We start in Cape Town, where 5 people are expected to appear in the Strand Magistrates Court in connection with the vigilante attack that claimed the lives of 3 men at the weekend. Then, in Durban, the release of the Stop Stockouts Project Survey report will be presented today. It includes the latest details on the shortage of essential medicines in the public health system. And in Pretoria, officials from the Mpumalanga government, accompanied by the Health MEC and traditional leaders, they are expected to visit initiation schools in the province to ensure that adequate and healthy conditions are adhered to. 2 years ago, more than 30 initiates died during the winter season. Now, before we go to a break, let's take a look at something completely different. The biggest great white shark ever seen appears in this video. The shark made an appearance during a cage dive off Mexico's Guadalupe Island recently. The mammoth beast saunters past the cage, making the divers look rather cartoonesque in comparison. It's estimated that the shark is well over 7 meters long and could tip the scales at around 3 tons. Well, that's big enough, isn't it? You're watching Newsroom. We'll be back with you after a short break.
The man with silky vocals that had many viewers captivated from his very first audition, now holds the title of King of South African Idols Season 10.
I came from the streets, so I was a bit rough. So when I got to Boys Town, I started teaching myself playing piano with 2 fingers. Well, that's how I started with music. So I started getting interested in piano, and then I started singing.
He's a loving father, loving husband, and he makes us happy.
Bophelong, your show about those who took on and conquered life's challenges. Every Saturday at 17:30 CAT.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom Now. According to a recent bank survey, South Africans are the biggest borrowers in the world, with 10.26 million people having accounts that are 3 months or even more in arrears. South Africans are battling to pay their debts, with a recent amendment to the National Credit Act that came into force to prevent reckless lending. South Africans who run into financial trouble and cannot get access to loans as before would now turn to loan sharks and also borrow money from family members. Now, to talk about this problem, we are joined in studio today by the CEO of Ituseng Credit Solutions, Magauta Mpahlele. Very good morning to you, my dear. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
How bad is our debt problem, our debt mountain that we face in South Africa?
It's quite bad. Currently, South Africans owe 1.6 trillion, 22 million of them, and like you said, 10.6 million are in trouble, meaning that they are struggling to repay their debt. Some are already in the legal process, having judgments and administration orders against their name.
That is scary. We always see debt as a financial thing. I want to talk to you about how this affects social welfare. How does it affect our society, wider society, these kind of massive debt bubbles that we have within our family homes?
It is very detrimental because within families, what happens is that when people get into trouble, it's because one of the household members, who was probably the breadwinner, being the one who's bringing in income, has lost a job, or they have been retrenched, or something in the family has happened, like divorce, illness and death in the family. So there is a lot of stress within families, which leads to family violence, and depression. And we have seen a few people who committed suicide.
Now, we see the new legislation. It's supposed to help with this. How much of this debt avalanche that we face is part of a legacy of a previous dispensation where lending was maybe a little bit reckless?
Well, I think we overcame that because remember the National Credit Act came into being in 2007. And during that time, the legislation tried to implement measures to curb this lending, but I think it was not that successful because reckless lending continued. The main problem being that consumers were not disclosing their real expenditure. And the new amendment is trying to say if you earn, let's say, 10,000 rand, you cannot declare less than a certain amount of your living expenses, so that it tries to make sure that you don't take more than what you can afford. But it's not also about affordability. The reality is that life happens.
Yes.
You can plan very well, and these days it takes more than a year. If you are retrenched, it will take more than a year to find a job. Yeah. So even if you had savings for 6 months, those get depleted because the job market, the economy is not growing. So it's a combination of factors. It's not about people also being reckless. It's
socio-economic conditions that plays.
And costs are going high. I mean, you look at petrol, you look at electricity, you look at food. Inflation is high, and salaries are not growing in line with the cost of living. The cost of living is high. Recently, rates and taxes are being raised. So if they are raised, where do you find the extra money? Most people go and borrow.
Is it not a case that South Africans are the world champions at living above our means?
Not necessarily. If you compare to the world, our debt to disposable income ratio is about 77%. If you look at the US, the Canada is above 150%. So economies are being driven by debt. And the reality is that we need to have measures in place to say, if something bad happens, what do we do? So compared to international, well-developing economies, we are not bad. Maybe in Africa, credit is not as high as that. It's quite different.
Periodically, we see the government and other agencies cautioning us against this debt. And whenever the news tightens a little bit economically, we're told to save money.
Yes.
Why don't we save money in South Africa?
Basically, there's nothing to save. Although
there's nothing to save. We're just spending it on food, are you saying? But I see people living, la vida loca, like we see in the music videos, very much above our means. Even if we look at the youth, there's this focus on instant gratification and flashing your cash.
Yes, South Africans love beautiful cars. They like beautiful homes. They like beautiful things. So all the time we say, you know what, our public transport system is bad. We all need cars. So the discussion is about what kind of car do you need. Obviously, you do have to live within your means. All of us have to have a car. All of us have to buy a house. And none of us, very few of us, can afford to buy it cash. We have to get credit to buy it. The problem is when you start taking credit cards, you start taking store cards and buying clothes and going on holidays. That's where the problem is. So most people good debt is your house. That cannot be avoided.
Yes.
Cars, yes, but buy a car that you can afford. Clothing and other stuff, cut down Buy
a smaller car.
Yes, buy a smaller car, fuel-efficient car, rather than a big German car that you cannot even afford to service or buy the tires when you hit a pothole. Chances of that are very high. We don't even save for emergencies, so yes.
Oh, that's very worrying indeed. And quickly, what advice would you give people who are now battling with the debt mountain hanging over their heads? What's a quick tip?
If you are battling, seek help. Because most of us allow, it to go so far as to getting a judgment, garnishing orders. But if you talk to your credit providers to reduce your debt, they can do that. If you are struggling on your own, come to us, get an expert. We can help you with that process. But people feel embarrassed to speak about it. But it gets worse.
It always gets worse if you try and wish your debt away. Pay your
can't.
debt. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. That's the CEO of Itusen Credit Solutions, Magauta Mpahlele, telling us that we are living above our means in South Africa and we have to find a way to service our debts. We're the most indebted country in the world, it seems. Anyhow, good news now. Rugby under 20 championship. South Africa's Baby Boks overpowered Australia by 46 points to 13 to secure their spot in the semi-finals. South Africa started the match in dominant fashion when they overpowered Australia in 2 early scrums, and it was all downhill from there. Here are some of your views. That's the pick of the day, mind you, and here are some of your views as to what was a fantastic result in South Africa being the first team to make it into the semi-finals. Let's have a look at what you guys have been saying about this. Barty says this is much better play by the Baby Boks, giving this Aussies a hiding on their way to a semi-final position. Rory Thornton says, after a slow start to the tournament, finally got our first win. Hopefully strong now and get that 5th position. Who are we talking about here? This is not about South Africa. Guys, come on, man. Rich Freeman says, they may have a good scrum, but if you can't tackle, there's no hope. Baby Blossoms go down 66-3 to Wales. Of course, these are some of the other matches that have been played at the Rugby World Cup. Well done to the Baby Boks and a good win. 2 more to go. Yes, a semi-final and a final. And South Africa could once again be the under-20 world champions. That would really be something that could set up the World Cup year for Springbok and South African rugby. Some of your views. Now, we move on. No, it's not about the Baby Boks. Guys, we have to move on right now. I'm a little bit lost here because there we go. We've got our book slot coming up. Sisters Triumph. That's what I'm saying. The book that details the story of 2 siblings, Soso Tamai and Su Tselani Molotane. The challenges the 2 sisters, both suffering from chronic illnesses, faced while they had to. The sister Soso, who had battled breast cancer for years, started having lumps at the early stage in her life, and it's been 2 years now since she's been healed. On the other hand, Sue, who's been living positively with the HIV virus for 9 years now. The book details their journey and how they've been coping and surviving day-to-day challenges. Today, it also joins us in studio. Unfortunately, Sue couldn't join us today as she has other commitments. Very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Great to have you with us. It's a fantastic story. Just tell me about the journey to get to this point where you've put together the book.
As we already said, we already mentioned that we both chronic survivors. We thought it would be better for us to share our journey with the readers out there. The book details our story. I, for one, am a breast cancer survivor, but my story differs from the others because I had lumps at an early age of 14. And then they were removed, later developed, and then, since then, I got scars, and then I knew that I have these lumps. However, in 2012, on the 1st of August, I was diagnosed with breast cancer stage 2. I had to go under chemotherapy, radiation, and all the process.
How was it for your family? It must have been very tough, 2 sisters, both suffering what we would call terminal terminal conditions. It's been very difficult for the family to come to terms with it.
It was difficult for them, but we are happy, and then we are blessed to have a family like mine because they are positive. And then when you have a positive people that are surrounded you, everything is possible. You know that you can beat this giant disease.
Now, I love the title of the book. It's called Sisters Triumph.
Yes, we are warriors.
It's really about overcoming the challenges that life really throws us at every day. Is this how you sort of came up? Is that you feel now you've won?
We have won now because remember, cancer is not easy, HIV is not easy, and then not only chronic out there, but like you, I think you do have your own challenges. Challenges are daily learning experience, and the more we overcome them, the better persons we become.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. You know, is that in South Africa, we're all struggling. Actually, around the world, I think all people struggle. You know, we all have problems that we have to overcome. Some people say I'm maybe a little bit crazy and I need to maybe rein myself in. But tell us about overcoming the daily struggles of dusting yourself off and going again.
Oh, you know what? Like I said, you have to have faith because where there's faith, there's light, there's happiness. At the end of the tunnel, there's a light. So we should all not dwell into negative and concentrate on the positive side of everything.
And your sister, she couldn't be here today. Tell me a little bit about your sister and how you guys have managed to really prop each other up over this time.
We are siblings. I'm the firstborn. She comes after me. And then, unfortunately, she's not here with us. Someone has to pay the bills.
So she's working.
She's working.
She's the one who's working.
She's working. Wonderful. So she's a good person. She's enjoying life. She's a single mother. And then, she's doing well.
And what about the support system? You're a single mother yourself, wider family. Tell us about that support system and how you've drawn from that.
Like I said, our family is very positive in everything that we do. We have a mom. He's a strong woman. And then without her, I don't know. My husband is very positive. My daughter, my everyone, my siblings. So, yeah, we are surrounded by positive people. So that is easy for us to handle all these things.
And tell me about the writing of the book. How did you guys come about the writing of the book? Was it the two of you sitting together and really putting your ideas down? And then
she was the one who came up with the idea that we have to write the book. I said, okay, oh no, man, what are we going to say? And then, here is the book. We have the story to tell. So it was easy because remember we grew up together. So it was easy to put everything in details.
Sisters Triumph. It's a wonderful book. Where can people get hold of it? And what's your advice to people who are out there who feel that sometimes it's getting a little bit too much?
They should know that someone once walked the journey, and they should know that challenges are just there. To make us strong. They should know that, you know what, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. They should just enjoy life because we don't know what tomorrow holds for us. They can get the book. They can contact me on Facebook. I'm Soso Tamai on Facebook, on Instagram, on Soso Tamai, and my email address also tamaisoso@gmail.com.
Well, there you go. Let me just show people the cover of this book. I love it. I think it's a quick read, and it's a fantastic story about the triumph over adversity. We all sometimes feel like life gets a little bit too much for us, while there are other people that overcome greater challenges than all of us. Thank you very much, Soso Tamai. Your sister, Sue, I would love to meet her. She sounds like a very inspirational woman.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
That's the book, Sisters Triumph. If you want to read a story about overcoming difficulty, that's what you should get. But let's take a quick look at what's on our Newsroom Facebook page. Of course, the world of news never stops. 6 months into the school year, Dumrara Senior Secondary School outside Mthatha in the Eastern Cape is without learner support material. Teachers are said to be borrowing textbooks from neighbouring schools. Then the United Nations says that at least 13,000 children have been recruited and are being used by both sides of South Sudan's conflict in the ongoing fighting in that country. And according to a draft UN report, the United Nations peacekeepers commonly pay for sex with cash, dresses, jewelry, perfume, cell phones and other items, despite a ban on such relationships with members of affected communities. For more news on that and other stories, you can go to our Facebook page. Of course, type in the search bar there, SABC Newsroom. The page will pop up. You can click like on it and you'll get updates real time. Also, you can go to sabc.co.za/news. That's where you can get all the latest news updates all of the time. You are watching Newsroom here on SABC News. We'll be back with you after a short little break.
We live in a digital era, and the number of Africans with mobile phones is rapidly increasing.
Twitter use is predominantly being done on smartphones. This is a very African phenomenon.
Here, there are constantly new innovative ways to make the internet more affordable. With that, we're seeing protests against governments proposing methods to limit access. On Network, we give you information about all of this. We also have new computers, games, and robots.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. As controversy overshadows South Africa's 2010 Soccer World Cup anniversary today, Brazilian soccer great Zico has declared his candidacy for FIFA presidency. After saying he would be available for soccer's top job, author Koim Rabu says there would need to be a change of rules in order to make his run viable. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has made it clear that the possibility of a referendum on Gauteng's e-tolls is not an option. In Parliament yesterday, Ramaphosa said government has heeded calls by the people of Gauteng to ensure e-tolls are affordable. And Ghana has halted a plan to test 2 Ebola vaccines in the eastern parts of the country. This after legislatures have backed local protests against the trials. The protests are said to be sparked by fears of contamination. Now, most of us know him for his role in Groet die Grootman, but he's back in the Afrikaans comedy stage production Twee vir die Prys van Een that will be showing in Johannesburg and Cape Town until the end of July. Hannes Miller, who is one of the leading roles in this new production, joins us today in studio. Hannes, thank you for coming through.
With a pleasure.
If we can start with this exciting new production, it's actually a piece written by Donald Churchill.
Yes, it ran on West End for quite some time. It's been adapted into Afrikaans by Wim Foster and the cast, obviously.
Yes.
It's a beautiful production, yeah. We had our first audience last night. They laughed. And that's all we want, basically. I don't think it was as funny as the Parliament.
Yes, sometimes that overshadows a few things.
That's the Brand script, that one. Yeah.
All right, so without giving away too much, what can we expect to see regarding the plot?
Oh, it's difficult not to give away. It's a very quirky little play. It's myself, Liz Meyering, and Michelle Botha. And it's a very different kind of play. It's very funny in the aspect of mistaken identity and so on. I play the part of a out-of-work actor. Sounds familiar. But I'm actually the painter. I'm a decorator. I'm a painter. I paint the ritual lady's house. And then something happens. She's been confronted by another woman that she's having an affair, allegedly, having an affair with her husband, the other woman's husband. Anyway, so we come up with this plan of mistaken identity. I pretend to be, or I play the part of her husband.
Okay.
So that's where all the fun starts.
It does sound like a lot of fun. Now, of course, Liz Meyering, Michelle Botha are big names within the Afrikaans entertainment industry.
That's right, yeah.
What has it been like working with them?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, myself and Liz, we've been working together for quite a long time. We had a company, Independent Performance Trust, many years ago. Yeah, we had a company together. It's fantastic. It's just such wonderful talent to work with. And a new director, I've never worked with Niels Klaassen. It's just a bundle of energy, creative energy. I really enjoyed. I love that new young energy that the young directors bring to the theatre these days. I absolutely adore it.
And definitely at some of these Afrikaans festivals, we know there are festivals like Art Club and so on, where we see so many of these great productions, take the stage. But this, for example, is not a production that is now part of a festival. So do you think that these Afrikaans productions have the possibility of being successful outside of these big festivals?
No, absolutely. We do have the festivals, and they there's a certain place for them. People go to there specifically to do that. I mean, if they don't go get fraught on the the carnival grounds or whatever. But yes, there's a certain place. A run at a casino, at a theatre. It's a wonderful thing to give people. They know it's there for a few months or for a few weeks, and they can see it. It is like a springboard. The festival's more like a springboard, because you can go there and you can show it to people and people can enjoy it. But it's a springboard to have a run somewhere else. We've now gone straight for the run, which I think is very viable, and people do come, and we want to create a new Afrikaans audience at Monte Casino.
Exactly.
And they're coming. We're doing very, very well. Please, the people are supporting us. They want to be entertained, and it's quality entertainment.
That's great. Well, the list of things that you've done in the past is just way too long to mention. But tell us, what are you keeping yourself busy with these days?
Very exciting. I started a company called Ping Art Productions. Me and my partner, Charlene van der Linde, and it's very, 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 very exciting, because we're bringing theatre back to the people. We're starting with educational theatre, going to schools, but we're also doing all kinds of corporates and everything. But the purpose of it was to establish an ensemble, a little company of young actors. Years ago, we had the opportunity to go to the regional councils or the arts councils, like PACT and PACOS and those places, where you can hone your skills and do runs and do different kind of works and repertoire theatre, different kind of things at the same time. And young actors do not have that opportunity. And we're trying to bring back that discipline aspect of theatre, and also bringing theatre and the wonder of theatre back to people and to children.
Well, definitely so many exciting things happening within the Afrikaans entertainment industry. Hannes, quickly before we wrap, can we see this play, until when, and where can we get tickets?
CompuTicket, it is at Monte Casino at Peter Turin's Studio Theatre. And at Monte Casino, then we're going to Theatre on the Bay and Camps Bay in Cape Town. And they can, tickets, and we show from Wednesday to Sundays until, I think, the 12th of July, and then open on the 15th in Cape Town.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Hannes. Well, that's Hannes Miller, of course, one of the leading roles in 2 van die Prys van 1. And we hope you get to Monte Casino here in Johannesburg to go and see it. Evan, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janine. It's almost time for us to give it a wrap, but 5 years ago today was a big day for South Africa, anniversary of our World Cup opening ceremonies. It was also a day when Spiwa Shabalala scored one of the best goals of all World Cups. Here are some of your views on this live tweeting at SABC Newsroom. And this day marks the first goal scored by a South African, Shaba Shabalala, that one from Unathi Grootboom. Yes, it was a great day in our history. Of course, now people look back at it with suspicion because of what's been going on. Mother of Joy says, Madisha, go learn English since you think it's so important. Jealous, you sound like a primary school bully. This, of course, after the insinuations of drinking in Parliament yesterday. And then this is FIFA crisis. Brazil legend Zico enters the race to replace Sepp Blatter. Yes, we brought you that. It's on the Telegraph in the UK running right now. Zico, pick me for FIFA president, says Abraham. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen, sir. Those are your tweets, your views. Keep it coming at SABC Newsroom. We love to interact with you. We love the fact that you give us your views. This is where we wrap it. Newsroom broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Don't forget, we're also streaming live on YouTube at that time, and the whole show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.